The moment you start tolerating disrespect, you quietly teach people how to treat you. And most people don't realize this. Disrespect rarely starts loud. It starts small. A comment here, a joke there, a boundary crossed just a little, until one day you realize someone has been slowly shrinking your worth. If you've ever experienced something like this, pause for a second and think about it. And if this message is helping you see these patterns more clearly, make sure you subscribe and stay with this channel, because understanding human behavior can change the way people treat you for the rest of your life. One of the most subtle but damaging forms of disrespect is emotional dismissal. It happens when you express how something affected you and the other person immediately shuts it down instead of trying to understand it. You might say something honest like, "That comment actually hurt me," and instead of listening, they respond with phrases like, "You're too sensitive," "You're overreacting," or "It was just a joke." In that moment, the conversation is no longer about what happened. It becomes about making your feelings seem unreasonable. Emotional dismissal slowly teaches you that your emotions are inconvenient, exaggerated, or unimportant. At first, many people don't recognize it as disrespect because it doesn't always sound aggressive. Sometimes it even appears calm or logical. The other person may say they are just being realistic, or that you should not take things so seriously. But the real issue is that they are refusing to acknowledge your emotional experience. Healthy communication allows two things to exist at the same time. One person can disagree with your perspective while still respecting how you feel. Emotional dismissal removes that space completely. It erases your feelings from the conversation as if they have no value. Over time, this pattern can quietly reshape your behavior. When someone repeatedly dismisses your emotions, you may begin to question yourself before speaking. You start filtering what you say, wondering if you are being dramatic or difficult. Eventually, you might stop expressing your feelings altogether because you expect them to be ignored or minimized. This creates a dynamic where one person's emotional reality dominates the relationship while the other person's experience slowly disappears. Respectful people respond very differently when you share how you feel. They may ask questions, they may try to understand the situation, or they may simply acknowledge that something affected you. Even a simple response like, "I didn't realize that bothered you, tell me more," creates space for connection and understanding. Emotional dismissal closes that space immediately and replaces it with judgment or indifference. When you recognize emotional dismissal for what it is, you start seeing how powerful your response can be. Instead of arguing to prove your feelings are valid, you calmly reinforce that your emotions deserve acknowledgement. That quiet confidence sends a clear message that your experience matters and that conversations about your feelings cannot be erased or brushed aside. Public humiliation is a form of disrespect that happens when someone tries to lower your dignity in front of other people. It often appears in subtle ways, which is why many people miss it at first. Someone might make a sarcastic comment about you during a group conversation, reveal a personal detail about you that others didn't know, or correct you in a harsh tone while everyone is watching. The moment might look like humor or casual conversation on the surface, but the emotional impact is very different. Instead of feeling respected or safe, you suddenly feel exposed. What makes public humiliation particularly harmful is the presence of an audience. When disrespect happens privately, it is still painful, but when it happens in front of others, it attacks your social standing as well as your confidence. Human beings naturally care about how they are perceived by the group around them. When someone embarrasses you publicly, they are not only challenging your feelings, they are also shaping how others see you. Even if the comment is small, the experience can stay in your mind long after the moment has passed. Often the person responsible will disguise this behavior as humor. They might say something like, "Relax, I'm just joking," or, "You know I didn't mean it like that." The problem is that humor used at someone else's expense is rarely harmless. Real humor brings people together, while humiliation isolates someone and places them at the center of a laugh they never agreed to be part of. When the same person repeatedly uses jokes, teasing, or sarcastic remarks that make you uncomfortable in front of others, it becomes a pattern rather than an accident. Another common form of public humiliation happens through constant correction. Someone interrupts you in a meeting or conversation to point out your mistake in a sharp or condescending tone. Instead of speaking to you privately or addressing the issue respectfully, they choose a moment where others are present. This shifts the focus from solving a problem to establishing dominance in the group. Respectful people protect your dignity when others are around. If they disagree with you, they communicate it without attacking your character or exposing your vulnerabilities. They understand that preserving someone's respect in public strengthens trust and connection. Public humiliation does the opposite. It creates distance, resentment, and a sense that your value is being reduced for the sake of someone else's attention or control. Broken boundaries are one of the clearest forms of disrespect because they happen after you have already communicated what you are comfortable with and what you are not. A boundary is simply a line that protects your time, your energy, your space, or your emotional well-being. It might sound like saying you are not available for something, asking someone not to speak to you in a certain way, or explaining that you need personal space in a situation. When someone respects you, they may not always like your boundary, but they acknowledge it and adjust their behavior. Disrespect begins when someone treats that boundary like it does not matter. Instead of accepting it, they push against it, they question it, test it, or try to negotiate their way around it. For example, you might say you cannot help with something because you are busy, and the other person continues asking again and again, hoping you will eventually give in. You might ask someone not to make certain comments around you, yet they repeat the same behavior later and claim they forgot or that you are being too strict. These moments reveal a deeper message. They believe their preferences are more important than your limits. At first, the pressure may seem small, almost harmless. A person might laugh it off or frame it as persistence. They might say things like, "Come on, it's not a big deal," or "just this once." But each time a boundary is ignored, the line becomes weaker. Over time, the person learns that your limits are flexible if they push hard enough. This creates a pattern where your needs slowly move further into the background while their expectations grow stronger. Broken boundaries also affect how you see yourself. When you repeatedly allow someone to cross a line you clearly set, it can create frustration and self-doubt. You may start wondering if you are being unreasonable for wanting that boundary in the first place. In reality, the issue is not the boundary. The issue is the lack of respect for it. Healthy relationships treat boundaries as important information rather than obstacles. When someone values you, they pay attention to the limits you express because those limits show them how to interact with you in a way that maintains trust. Respectful people understand that boundaries are not barriers meant to push others away. They are guidelines that protect mutual respect and allow relationships to grow. With constant interruption is a subtle but powerful form of disrespect that often goes unnoticed because it happens in everyday conversations. When someone repeatedly cuts you off while you are speaking, talks over your sentences, or jumps in before you finish expressing a thought, it sends a quiet message about whose voice matters more in that moment. Communication is supposed to be an exchange, a balance where both people have space to speak and be heard. Interruption breaks that balance and replaces it with control. At first, it may seem like enthusiasm. Some people interrupt because they are excited or eager to respond. But when the pattern becomes frequent, the effect changes. You begin to notice that every time you try to explain something, the other person takes over the conversation before your idea is complete. They may finish your sentences incorrectly, redirect the discussion toward themselves, or completely change the topic before you had the chance to finish your point. Over time, this pattern communicates that your thoughts are secondary to theirs. The psychological effect of constant interruption can be stronger than people realize. When someone is regularly talked over, they begin to hesitate before speaking. They may shorten their explanations, rush their words, or stop sharing ideas altogether because they expect to be interrupted anyway. This gradually reduces their presence in conversations and sometimes even in decision-making spaces like work meetings, group discussions, or family conversations. Interruptions can also be used as a subtle way to dominate a discussion. In group settings, the person who interrupts the most often controls the direction of the conversation. By cutting others off, they decide which ideas get attention and which ones disappear before they are fully expressed. This behavior can shift attention and authority toward the interrupter while making others feel less confident about contributing. Respectful communication looks very different. It involves patience and awareness. People who value your perspective allow you to finish your thoughts before responding. Even when they disagree, they wait for the moment when your idea is fully expressed so the conversation remains balanced. This small act of listening signals that your voice deserves the same space as anyone else's in the room. When interruptions become constant, that shared space quietly disappears and the conversation stops being equal, without resentment or pressure. Constant interruption is a subtle but powerful form of disrespect that often goes unnoticed because it happens in everyday conversations. When someone repeatedly cuts you off while you are speaking, talks over your sentences, or jumps in before you finish expressing a thought, it sends a quiet message about whose voice matters more in that moment. Communication is supposed to be an exchange, a balance where both people have space to speak and be heard. Interruption breaks that balance and replaces it with control. At first, it may seem like enthusiasm. Some people interrupt because they are excited or eager to respond. But when the pattern becomes frequent, the effect changes. You begin to notice that every time you try to explain something, the other person takes over the conversation before your idea is complete. They may finish your sentences incorrectly, redirect the discussion toward themselves, or completely change the topic before you had the chance to finish your point. Over time, this pattern communicates that your thoughts are secondary to theirs. The psychological effect of constant interruption can be stronger than people realize. When someone is regularly talked over, they begin to hesitate before speaking. They may shorten their explanations, rush their words, or stop sharing ideas altogether because they expect to be interrupted anyway. This gradually reduces their presence in conversations and sometimes even in decision-making spaces like work meetings, group discussions, or family conversations. Interruptions can also be used as a subtle way to dominate a discussion. In group settings, the person who interrupts the most often controls the direction of the conversation. By cutting others off, they decide which ideas get attention and which ones disappear before they are fully expressed. This behavior can shift attention and authority toward the interrupter while making others feel less confident about contributing. Respectful communication looks very different. It involves patience and awareness. People who value your perspective allow you to finish your thoughts before responding. Even when they disagree, they wait for the moment when your idea is fully expressed so the conversation remains balanced. This small act of listening signals that your voice deserves the same space as anyone else's in the room. When interruptions become constant, that shared space quietly disappears and the conversation stops being equal. Disguised disrespect is one of the most confusing forms of disrespect because it hides behind things that appear harmless on the surface. Instead of direct insults or obvious rudeness, the person wraps their negative remarks inside humor, advice, sarcasm, or fake concern. The words may sound light or playful, but the emotional impact leaves you feeling smaller, embarrassed, or uncomfortable. Because the comment is disguised, it becomes difficult to call it out without feeling like you might be overreacting. A common example is the joke that keeps targeting the same person. Someone might make fun of your appearance, your decisions, or something personal about you, and when you react, they quickly say something like, "Relax, it's just a joke," or "You can't take a little humor." The laughter around the room can make you feel like the problem is your reaction rather than the comment itself. But real humor does not repeatedly place one person in a position where they feel exposed or belittled. Another form of disguised disrespect appears as criticism hidden inside advice. Someone might say they are only trying to help you improve, but the way they speak is filled with judgment. Instead of constructive guidance, their words carry a tone that makes you feel incompetent or inferior. They may phrase it in a way that sounds thoughtful, yet the pattern leaves you doubting yourself rather than feeling supported. Disguised disrespect can also show up through backhanded compliments. These are statements that appear positive at first, but contain a hidden insult. A person might say something like, "You actually did a good job this time," or "I'm surprised you handled that so well." The surface sounds like praise, but the underlying message questions your ability or worth. Comments like these slowly chip away at confidence while giving the speaker a way to deny any negative intent. What makes disguised disrespect powerful is the built-in defense it provides for the person delivering it. If you challenge the comment, they can easily claim they were joking, being honest, or trying to help. This shifts attention away from their behavior and places pressure on you to accept the remark quietly. Over time, repeated exposure to these hidden insults can create tension and self-doubt, especially when the person continues presenting their words as harmless or well-intentioned, while the impact consistently feels diminishing. Chronic interruption of your art time and commitments is another form of disrespect many people tolerate without realizing how damaging it can be. Time is one of the most valuable resources a person has. When someone repeatedly wastes it, ignores schedules, cancels plans last minute, or expects you to always adjust for them, the underlying message is simple: their priorities matter more than yours. At first, it may appear harmless. A friend arrives 30 minutes late and laughs it off. A coworker constantly delays meetings or asks for urgent help at the last moment. A partner makes promises but repeatedly changes plans without considering how it affects you. Each individual moment may seem small, but when it becomes a pattern, it slowly communicates a lack of respect for your life, your responsibilities, and your boundaries. People who disrespect your time often rely on your patience. They assume you will always understand, always adjust, and always be available. Over time, this creates an imbalance where you are the one rearranging your schedule while they remain careless about theirs. You might start planning your day around someone who does not plan around you at all. That imbalance can quietly build frustration because your effort is not being matched. Another common sign of time disrespect is when someone constantly expects immediate responses or urgent attention to their needs while ignoring yours. They may send messages demanding quick replies, call repeatedly when they want something, or expect you to drop what you are doing to help them. But when the situation is reversed, they suddenly become unavailable or slow to respond. This double standard reveals that your time is being treated as flexible while theirs is treated as important. Respectful people understand that everyone has responsibilities, priorities, and limits. When they make plans, they try to honor them. If something unexpected happens, they communicate clearly and acknowledge the inconvenience. They understand that respecting someone's time is a way of respecting the person themselves. When you begin to take your time seriously, something changes in how others interact with you. You become more selective about what you agree to and more comfortable saying no when something does not align with your schedule or energy. That shift sends a quiet but powerful signal that your time is not an open resource to be used without consideration. Lack of accountability is a form of disrespect that shows up when someone refuses to take responsibility for their actions, especially after their behavior has hurt you or created a problem. In healthy relationships, mistakes are inevitable. People misunderstand each other, say the wrong thing, or make decisions that affect others negatively. What protects the relationship is accountability. It is the ability to admit a mistake, acknowledge the impact, and make an effort to correct it. When someone avoids that responsibility, it creates a pattern where problems repeat without resolution. This kind of disrespect often appears through excuses, deflection, or blame shifting. Instead of admitting what they did, the person quickly redirects the conversation. They might say things like, "That's not what I meant," "You misunderstood me," or "You're making this bigger than it is." Sometimes they even turn the situation around and make you feel responsible for the problem. Suddenly, the focus is no longer on their behavior, but on your reaction to it. Over time, this behavior can become extremely frustrating because it blocks any real progress in the relationship. When accountability is missing, every conflict ends the same way. The issue is never fully acknowledged, the responsibility is never accepted, and the same pattern quietly repeats again later. You may find yourself explaining the same concern again and again, hoping that eventually the other person will recognize their role in the situation. Lack of accountability can also show up in the form of a hollow apology. Someone might say sorry quickly just to end the conversation, but their behavior never changes afterward. A genuine apology includes awareness of what happened and a willingness to act differently in the future. Without that effort, the apology becomes a way to escape the conversation rather than repair the damage. When someone consistently refuses to take responsibility, it creates an unhealthy dynamic where one person carries the emotional weight of the relationship. You may find yourself constantly adjusting, forgiving, or explaining, while the other person continues behaving the same way without reflection. This imbalance slowly drains trust and respect, because accountability is one of the foundations that keeps relationships fair and stable. Manipulation disguised as care or concern is another form of disrespect that can be difficult to recognize because it often comes wrapped in kind-sounding words. Instead of openly controlling or criticizing you, the person presents their behavior as if they are trying to protect you, guide you, or help you make better decisions. On the surface, it can look supportive, but underneath there is often an attempt to influence your choices, your confidence, or your independence. This usually begins with subtle comments that question your judgment. Someone might say things like, "I'm only saying this because I care about you," or "I just want what's best for you." While those phrases can sometimes be genuine, they can also be used to soften criticism that is meant to steer your behavior in a direction that benefits them rather than you. The concern becomes a tool that allows them to interfere without appearing controlling. Another way this manipulation appears is through guilt. The person may remind you of everything they have done for you before asking you to do something in return. They might say they feel hurt or disappointed when you make a choice that does not align with what they want. Instead of respecting your independence, they frame your decision as selfish or ungrateful. This emotional pressure can make you feel responsible for their feelings, even when your choice is completely reasonable. Over time, manipulation disguised as care can make you question your own instincts. Because the person repeatedly frames their behavior as protection or guidance, you may start wondering whether they truly know what is better for you. This creates a subtle shift where their opinions begin to carry more authority over your life than your own judgment. The more this pattern continues, the easier it becomes for them to influence your actions without openly demanding control. Healthy care and support feel very different. When someone genuinely respects you, they can offer advice or express concern without trying to control the outcome. They trust that you are capable of making your own decisions, even if those decisions are different from what they would choose. Real care empowers you to think and act for yourself. Manipulation disguised as care quietly pushes you to depend on someone else's approval instead of trusting your own voice.